Marcus Thornfield, 52, a retired Army Corps engineer on a 40-acre homestead along Willow Creek. Our access is a hand-hewn oak bridge my great-grandfather built in the 1920s. It links the driveway to the county road and has carried 4 generations home. We've maintained it with traditional oils and repairs, respecting the craft in its mortise and tenon joints. Willowbrook subdivision grew around us, and the HOA presidency shifted to Deborah Kensington Price. 6 months after she arrived, Deborah labeled the bridge substandard, ordered replacement with an HOA-approved concrete span, and threatened $500 per day in fines. I declined. The bridge predates the subdivision and sits on my property. Soon, heavy construction traffic began crossing as an approved route. 30-ton cement mixers rolled over the deck, leaving diesel haze and grit on the railings. After each pass, I noted fresh checks and hairline fractures radiating from bolt lines and bearing seats, with spalls appearing along weathered edges. Her brother-in-law, the city building inspector, arrived for an emergency evaluation and pronounced the bridge critically unsafe, granting 30 days to demolish or face action. I approached the dispute as engineering, not argument. I photographed members and bearings, measured live load deflection with a level and tape, logged axle counts and timestamps, and compared every reading to earlier images showing tight joinery and sound decking. The record thickened. Dates, loads, measurements. A sequential technical log. At my daughter Sarah's backyard wedding reception, 6 cement trucks arrived in timed succession. The structure shuddered. Glassware rattled. Elderly guests braced on the rail. I overheard drivers mention double time from Kensington Construction. Later records confirmed Deborah holds a 40% stake in that supplier. The next business day, an $80,000 bid arrived for a concrete span meeting HOA guidelines, while a state historical appraisal valued the existing bridge at $150,000. The pattern was documented. HOA decree, routed mass observable damage, and a vendor financially tied to the HOA president. My response followed core practice. Gather data. Preserve evidence. Prepare legal and technical action. I carefully cataloged each truck, invoice, fracture line, and deflection under comparable loads. No dramatics, only records. The dispute moved from declarations to a measurable timeline of motive, method, and consequence across one bridge. Excellent. I'll generate sections 2 through 11 in order, each with a section title, labeled word count exactly 370 each, and a consistent factual, documentary narrative tone. When heavy trucks continued to cross despite warnings, I filed for an emergency restraining order. My attorney, Jim Patterson, assembled a clear timeline, pre-truck photos showing intact decking, then successive fractures after concrete loads. In district court, Judge Evelyn Hart granted a temporary halt pending independent analysis. I contacted Dr. Amanda Rodriguez, a structural engineer from the State University. She installed strain sensors beneath the deck, logged deflection under controlled weights, and concluded the bridge showed recent overload signatures but retained high integrity. Built for centuries. Momentum shifted briefly. Deborah answered through social and HOA channels. Posts labeled the bridge antiquated, implied danger to children, and accused me of resisting progress. Her wording spread fast. Unsafe, eyesore, selfish. Screenshots captured each comment for record. 2 weeks later, Judge Bradley Hoffman replaced Hart on rotation and dissolved the TRO, citing no irreparable harm and accepting HOA jurisdiction over approved traffic routes. The bridge, though private, was treated as part of subdivision circulation. Trucks resumed within 24 hours. From dawn to dusk, mixers returned at half-hour intervals. A larger pumper deflected the deck 6 inches mid-span. Dr. Rodriguez's sensors confirmed overload beyond posted limits. She logged the event and advised immediate restriction, which the HOA ignored. Noise, soot, and vibration filled the homestead. I documented, not reacted. License plates, timestamps, audio of bridge strain, and vibration readings joined the archive. Then came reputational tactics. Anonymous online threads accused me of being anti-growth and endangering property values. County inspectors arrived on anonymous complaints, unlicensed work, debris, noise, but found nothing. Reports were filed, copies added to the binder. By month's end, evidence stood organized. A professional opinion verifying the bridge's inherent strength, a brief TRO on record, its reversal under procedural grounds, and clear continuation of heavy traffic over a privately deeded span. Deborah's safety narrative persisted publicly, while documented stress readings contradicted it. Each dataset moved the dispute from neighborhood rumor to measured structural evidence. One logbook, one chart, one order at a time. Courthouse research replaced argument. I met Mrs. Henderson, the county records clerk who remembered my grandfather. Together we retrieved the original 1923 survey of the property. In crisp handwriting it established perpetual right of passage for family and invited guests across Willow Creek via the timber bridge. The clause predates any HOA covenant by nearly a century. I digitized every page and overlaid it on current plats. The coordinates matched precisely. Our bridge sits on deeded ground, not within subdivision easements. Under property law, earlier recorded rights override later contractual encumbrances. The bridge is thus grandfathered, protected from HOA regulation. To strengthen the record, I contacted Elizabeth Morrison, a regional historian. She examined joinery, identified hand-cut pegs, and confirmed Depression-era craftsmanship. Her preliminary report stated the bridge qualified for state historic designation, triggering environmental and preservation review before any demolition. With that report, I invited 4 HOA board members, excluding Deborah, to my workshop. On the table, the 1923 survey, Morrison's findings, and annotated photographs. Patricia Walsh, a director, studied the documents and asked if the HOA could face liability for misrepresenting authority. I answered with citations. Silence filled the room. The certainty of printed law replaced rumor. Days later, Deborah called an emergency HOA meeting. Flyers displayed color images of unrelated bridge collapses captioned, "Do not wait for tragedy." She labeled my property commercial because delivery trucks sometimes crossed, imposed $50,000 retroactive fees with $25,000 penalties, and threatened a lien and forced sale. I responded in writing only, attaching the 1923 survey, Morrison's letter, and photographs. No commentary, just record evidence. Within minutes of circulation, several residents questioned Deborah's authority. This phase ended not with confrontation but with paperwork, survey numbers and signatures from a century earlier restoring the true hierarchy of rights. The conflict shifted from opinion to provenance. A timber span recorded before modern zoning now carried the weight of documented continuity. Each archive page narrowed the debate, replacing HOA assertion with verifiable title. The next HOA meeting began routine until I presented new material. County filings revealed Kensington Development Company, incorporated months before Deborah moved in, had submitted plans for luxury creekfront condos mapped exactly over my property line. Supporting documents showed bank loans listing anticipated collateral Thornfield parcel. I projected the pages onto the community center wall. Silence followed the realization that the demolition push and truck routing aligned with a pending development scheme. Patricia Walsh asked whether Deborah had disclosed ownership in Kensington Development. Deborah deflected, citing confidentiality and safety motives. A motion arose from Jake Morrison, longtime resident. Vote of no confidence. Ballots passed. Deborah was removed as HOA president. The board appointed Patricia Walsh as interim leader pending investigation. Outside the hall, Deborah spoke to reporters, calling the vote illegitimate. Inside, I continued documentation, minutes, audio, ballots, timestamps. That evening I backed up every digital file twice and expanded physical storage. Dr. Rodriguez prepared final sensor data. Elizabeth Morrison advanced the historic site petition. Jim Patterson filed notice to preserve evidence from HOA servers before deletion. Though removed from office, Deborah maintained influence through contacts in local permitting. Her correspondence showed attempts to refile condo applications under a partner's name. These records, retrieved from public portals, added to the case binder. The pattern was clear. Bridge condemnation tied to a financial plan. HOA authority served as entry point for private gain. By contrast, my response remained procedural. Record retrieval, certified mail, and sworn affidavits. The section closes on two parallel realities: a board realigned by exposure of documents, and an ex-president persisting through back channels. No dramatics, just the steady rhythm of accountability measured by filings and timestamps. The bridge still stood. The paper trail now pointed beyond neighborhood politics toward a coordinated property acquisition effort. Weeks later, Mrs. Henderson called from archives. She had located a 1919 township map, tracing Willow Creek's original path. The survey marked riparian boundaries and ownership clauses tied to William Thornfield, my great-grandfather. Those lines included water use rights extending through today's subdivision. Under Colorado riparian law, such rights remain private unless condemned or sold. No record shows transfer. In effect, my family retains primary control of creek access, rights the HOA has advertised and charged fees for since its founding. Jim Patterson examined the map and quietly said, "This changes everything." He prepared a quiet title action to confirm ownership and a formal audit demand for HOA funds collected for creek maintenance. I declined any move that would punish innocent homeowners. The aim remained accountability, not disruption. The implications rippled fast. If water rights belong to the Thornfield parcel, every covenant promising access may be invalid. HOA newsletters stopped mid-sentence and board communication shifted to legal counsel. In meetings, I clarified, the goal is not exclusion, it is correction. Historical continuity must align with current records. I requested cooperative settlement ensuring bridge preservation, proper environmental stewardship, and transparent financial adjustment. Mrs. Henderson helped notarize affidavits linking deeds from 1919 to present tax receipts, an unbroken chain. The evidence added a new dimension. The dispute now encompassed land and water. The section ends on a quiet note of leverage. Where earlier I defended a single structure, I now held documented rights spanning the creek itself. The upcoming filings would test those boundaries in court but also offer negotiation for reform. Each map, seal, and affidavit stacked methodically. Every new discovery reframed the conflict from nuisance fines to fundamental property governance across the entire subdivision. By late summer, coordination replaced isolation. My workshop became headquarters. Around the table, Jim Patterson managing filings, Dr. Amanda Rodriguez compiling structural data, Elizabeth Morrison finalizing historic designation, Mrs. Henderson organizing title archives. We set 4 objectives. Legal. File the quiet title action and demand a forensic HOA audit. Preservation. Submit the bridge for state historic review. Technical. Finalize the overload report proving targeted stress. Public information. Prepare factual releases correcting misinformation. Evidence mapping exposed deeper ties. The inspector who condemned the bridge, Deborah's brother-in-law, held a paid consultant contract with Kensington Development. Campaign filings showed Judge Hoffman received contributions from Kensington Construction's PIC before reversing the TRO. Each fact was documented without commentary. Security increased. Cameras covered approaches. Redundant backups stored off-site. A laminated checklist hung by the door, photos, logs, chain of custody entries. The plan's discipline mirrored a field operation. Verify, record, duplicate. Team meetings emphasized restraint. No speculation, no retaliation, only lawful process. Dr. Rodriguez prepared exhibits showing soil saturation risks that made concrete spans less stable than timber in flood zones. Morrison gathered testimony from preservation boards. Henderson certified archive copies for court submission. In strategy briefings, we repeated one line: prove everything twice. That became mantra and method. The section closes with a steady camera over papers and instruments, maps layered on blueprints, laptops humming, binders color-coded by discipline. The case had evolved into a coordinated investigation connecting engineering, history, and law. The bridge stood at the center, unchanged yet newly understood, as both artifact and evidence. Retaliation arrived in layers. Deborah filed 3 lawsuits: slander for statements made in meetings, emergency demolition citing imminent collapse, and damages for obstruction. Each was answered through Patterson's office. At 2:30 a.m., trail cameras triggered. Footage showed Stephen Walsh, HOA board member, loosening bolts and drilling small holes through primary beams. Intentional weakening. Timestamps, angles, and sound confirmed sabotage. Deputies secured the site. Evidence sealed. Online coordinated posts labeled me unstable and unpatriotic, implying my service record was fabricated. Screenshots archived. Simultaneously, Deborah contacted my wife Linda's bank employer, hinting at mortgage review for liability exposure. HR logged the call. Days later, a demolition crew arrived with county orders. The header looked official but misspelled the county name. My cameras recorded Deborah's car idling nearby. I refused access and phoned the sheriff. Within hours, the forgery was verified. The crew admitted receiving cash and verbal assurance that permits were cleared. They left immediately. These events shifted perception. Residents saw machinery turn away under flashing lights. Local news captured images of deputies examining fake documents. The narrative of safety collapsed under visible misconduct. Throughout, I maintained routine documentation, incident reports, chain of custody forms, digital backups. The contrast grew between the precision of evidence and the desperation of attempts to erase it. This section remains factual. 3 lawsuits, 1 act of sabotage, reputational smears, financial intimidation, and a forged demolition order, each logged, verified, and incorporated into the expanding case file. A new dimension surfaced when Rebecca Martinez from the state EPA contacted me regarding unpermitted grading near wetlands downstream. She cited reports from biologist Dr. Sarah River, documenting endangered salamander habitat adjacent to the bridge. State inspectors scheduled a site visit. Before inspection day at 4 a.m., engines echoed across the creek. Floodlights ignited, revealing excavators and a crew assembling for emergency removal. Papers flashed in headlights, another fraudulent demolition notice claiming partial collapse and contamination risk. Steel reinforcements I had discreetly added months earlier prevented quick damage. I confronted the foreman, asked for permits, and recorded the exchange. He hesitated, realizing television cameras were arriving. Patterson had notified Channel 7 News and the sheriff simultaneously. Deputies ordered machinery off the bridge and demanded identification. Within minutes, footage of the event aired live. Forged orders, unauthorized equipment, and environmental inspectors confirming protected habitat violation risk. Trail cam clips showing Stephen Walsh's sabotage were played alongside. At sunrise, deputies served an arrest warrant on Deborah Kensington Price for attempted destruction of private property, forgery, and conspiracy. Viewers watched as she was led from the site in handcuffs. The bridge remained intact beneath morning mist, sensors still transmitting data. This section concludes with the image that defines turning point. Early light. Machinery halted. Law enforcement collecting documents under live broadcast. Facts required no narration. The footage, timestamps, and official arrests marked the transition from civil dispute to criminal accountability. A month later, the Willowbrook Community Center overflowed. Interim President Patricia Walsh opened the meeting under county supervision. On projector screens, I displayed the 1919 map, the Kensington loan filings, and the sabotage video. County Attorney Michael Torres explained that my family's riparian rights predate subdivision formation and cannot be overridden by HOA covenants. Homeowners who had paid creek maintenance fees realized those funds were collected without authority. Murmurs filled the hall as audits were announced. Evidence of forged letters, bribery, and environmental violations followed. Deborah, released on bond, attempted to justify her actions as public service. Patterson presented the cash payment records connecting her to the construction supplier and forged demolition crew. EPA Inspector Martinez confirmed wetland breaches. As questions erupted, deputies entered with a second warrant, new counts of fraud and obstruction. Cameras recorded Deborah's rearrest mid-meeting. The board unanimously voted to rescind prior bridge orders, issue a public apology, and cooperate fully with state investigators. Residents approached me afterward, some embarrassed by earlier hostility, others offering assistance with restoration. I thanked them and reminded everyone that documents, not anger, had carried the case. The town hall segment ends on practical resolution, facts presented, authority reestablished, and community reoriented toward transparency. No triumphal tone, only procedural closure through visible accountability and recorded votes. 6 months later, sentencing confirmed the written record. Deborah Kensington Price received 18 months federal imprisonment for fraud, conspiracy, and environmental violations. Kensington Development declared bankruptcy. Restitution funds repaid misused HOA dues. Her brother-in-law lost his inspector post following bribery findings. The HOA dissolved, then reformed under revised bylaws emphasizing transparency, financial audits, and conflict of interest prohibitions. Patricia Walsh was elected president on a reform platform titled Never Again. 3 months after the trial, the Willow Creek Bridge achieved placement on the National Register of Historic Places. A state plaque marks its craftsmanship and endurance. Preservation grants funded repairs guided by Dr. Rodriguez and historian Morrison. Community focus shifted toward rebuilding trust. Volunteers organized creek cleanups, educational tours, and restoration workshops. The story became reference material for civic courses on property governance. No speculation, only outcomes recorded in orders, registries, and press releases. Legal accountability for misconduct aligned with institutional change for residents. The bridge stands restored, its grain darkened by age but sound. Beneath it flows the same creek my great-grandfather surveyed, now legally confirmed as private and protected. Post-litigation, the case evolved into service. Using restitution funds, I founded the Heritage Bridge Scholarship at the State University, supporting engineering students pursuing structural preservation. The Creek Restoration Project expanded under Dr. Sarah Rivers' direction. Amphibian habitats recovered, earning federal recognition. Each autumn, we host Bridge Day, where families tour the site, view restoration methods, and attend seminars on deed research and homeowner rights. Children trace bolt patterns once loosened in sabotage. They learn how documentation prevents destruction. Linda and I coordinate outreach through workshops titled Know Your Deed. Sessions teach residents how to access historical surveys, read covenants, and identify legitimate authority. Similar cases from other states contact us for guidance. We provide templates and checklists derived from our filings. Legislators cite the Thornfield precedent while drafting the Bridge Protection and Transparency Act, mandating independent engineering reviews before HOA ordered demolitions of private historic structures. Personal life resumed quietly. Sarah and her husband manage the event each year. Grandchildren fish from the same deck beams their ancestors cut by hand. Letters arrive from homeowners thanking us for showing that order, record keeping, and lawful persistence can restore balance against institutional overreach. The film's final frame lingers on the bridge at dusk, timbers lit by amber reflection, the waterline steady. The narration closes on the simplest truth drawn from every record collected. Property, when preserved by knowledge and documentation, withstands time and pressure alike. Receipts remain. Bridges stand.